Hi, my name's Ria Karnik and I'm a managing director in the London office of Major Lindsay in Africa. My focus is working with associates throughout their career, but I'm here today to speak a bit more specifically about what we would term mid-city firms and their place in the London market. So I suppose the first question really is, what are the key practice areas for mid-city firms? And it can be a real mix. Uh, there's the divide between those mid-city firms that focus on corporate clients, and typically with those firms, you'll see that they'll have the full range of traditional practice areas, including corporate, banking, real estate, disputes, TMT. But there are also mid-city firms that will focus slightly more or also work with high net worth and ultra high net worth clients. And with those firms, it's typical to see them also including practice areas such as private clients, private tax, ultra high net worth, residential property. Um, as I mentioned, whilst firms could focus on either, it may be the case that they'll also do both, and they'll maintain teams across both of those areas. Another distinction should be made for boutique law firms in the mid-market. These will be firms that will have a very specific sector focus, so perhaps media, sports, or technology. They'll still provide a full service offering to their clients, but it's very tailored to those specific sectors. A question I hear often is, how do these mid-market law firms differ to other areas of the legal market? And I think the key point here is actually the client base is likely to be made up of perhaps sometimes some slightly smaller clients, clients that may not have their own in-house legal function. This is really interesting because it means that lawyers that work within these firms tend to work in either a trusted advisor or almost a quasi in-house capacity. Um, these mid-market firms, they're typically very highly ranked in both Legal 500 and Chambers for their offerings across both transactional and contentious practice areas. But the key difference is also likely to be the quantum of those transactions or disputes. And if you're looking at the Legal 500, for example, under the corporate tab, you'll notice that they will rank their corporate teams in deals up to 50 million and then up to, I think it's 250 million, and then in excess of 500 million. The whole point with mid-city firms is it means that you have the chance to work closer with the client. You get to see the full remit of the process. You're not just working on a small part of a large transaction. And typically, even at the junior level, you'll take a greater involvement in negotiations, out of client meetings, etc. So what can you expect in terms of training, development, culture, way of working? Mid-city firms have become a really clear option for lawyers who want to ensure they're still going to have access to high quality work, but they want to work in a sustainable working culture. The hours targets are usually much lower. So on average, we see this sitting around 1,400 hours per annum, although there are some firms that would go as far down as kind of 1,000 to 1,200 hours per annum. You'll also notice that these firms have taken great steps to really differentiate themselves from larger city firms. It might be from a cultural aspect, so they're typically slightly less aggressive in their expectations for progression. They take a more holistic approach to wellness and to training. But you'll also notice that they still want great lawyers. They want people who want to take on additional responsibilities around business development. They're a bit more entrepreneurial as environments to work within. We've also seen a real push from mid-city firms over the past few years to grow out their learning and development functions. There's been a huge investment in knowledge management lawyers, career coaching, and career pathways to ensure clarity as to promotion. So where are mid-city firms pitched on salary? Well, just as with both US and international law firms, we've seen a lot of movement around salary and pay scales across the mid-city over the past couple of years. Typically, NQ salaries now sit around 75 to 85,000, with an uplift of anywhere between 3 to 5,000 each year. I think the key point to note with this, though, is that these salary ranges are benchmarked against annual targets of about 1,400 hours per annum, which is obviously a huge distinction from larger city firms, which would typically be kind of 1,600 upwards. The other distinction with this is most mid-city firms tend to view their hours targets as a genuine barometer of good activity. So it's perfectly acceptable to just achieve that 1,400 hours billable each year, and that would be regarded as excellent performance from that firm's perspective. In most instances as well, you'll then see that the bonus will be calculated on either achieving that annual target or achieving just below, and then the bonus will ratchet up with thresholds above that. When interviewing with mid-city firms, I think there's a slightly different stance that you need to take. You're inevitably going to be working as part of a close-knit team. So you should always think about your experience from a macro perspective, what it is that you have worked on in the past or kind of relevant matters that you've assisted with, but then also the micro, your specific role within each of those matters. And I think that's also a really nice way to showcase your level of experience, particularly as you become more experienced in your career. As I mentioned when we were talking about the client base of mid-city firms, it's also really important to remember that this client base, they may be slightly less sophisticated, they may not have in-house legal teams, and from that perspective, you'd be working in a trusted advisor capacity. So think about how you would advise a client with a limited knowledge of legal matters, and also think about that from an emotional perspective, and how you would guide them through the process as much as guiding them on the legal aspect as well. So mid-market firms offer a slightly different angle on a legal career, still access to high quality work, still working with a client base that is looking to kind of continue to develop and grow. It's just you'd be joining them at a different stage in their growth plans as well.